Hi, welcome to the CIDCI online Salon series. I'm Margie O'Driscoll, and on behalf of the CIDCI Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you here this afternoon, or evening, depending upon your time zone. CIDCI's mission is to accelerate change in the built environment by convening innovators for educational programs. We also serve as a trusted source of information about innovation. Special thanks to our sponsors who make this all possible. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge what a difficult time it is for many of you who now juggle homeschooling, caring for elders, and your day job, maybe from your living room table, like me. It's a lot. Some of you are back at your workplace or planning for others to return. We urge you to be compassionate with yourself as well as for those you live and work with. Here's a bit of information about how today's session will work. We are recording this session and we'll put it on the CIDCI website as soon as possible. If you have questions or comments, please use the chat box and we'll get to as many questions as we can following the presentation. Today we invited Anne McSorley to take a step beyond Rex Miller's presentation a few weeks ago about returning to work. Her discussion goes beyond the logistics of disinfecting the office fridge and taking your temperature. She will recommend strategies to respond to the looming mental health issues that we can all expect following a catastrophic event like the COVID-19 pandemic. She considers the human stress response, its symptoms and manifestations, as well as its potential impact on employees and business. A little bit about Anne. She's a business consultant and executive coach who focuses on organizational health and workplace consultation, providing services to individual executives and their teams. Her executive coaching practice includes C-level executives and senior managers throughout the United States and internationally. She joins us now from her home in downtown Atlanta. Anne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Margie. I appreciate the introduction. Hello, everyone. As Margie said, I'm Anne McSorley from WorkBest Consulting, and I started WorkBest in 2008 during the financial meltdown. I had already been very active in employee engagement issues and organizational health issues, but we saw a real need to talk about crucial communication and conflict and all the things that were affecting the workplace after a catastrophic event. Little did we know what a catastrophic event would look like a few short years later. You know, today I'm going to talk with you about mental health concerns post-COVID, which is a part of organizational health, all the things that deal with your workplace and your workforce and engagement. I'm hopefully going to be able to answer some of your questions about, in the next year or two, how mental health, how organizational health is going to present to your employees. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what's been happening the last couple of weeks across the United States and how that affects all of us. The racial strife is part of our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, and of course, our organizational health. So while this talk is not geared towards that divisiveness, which is occurring right now, many of the things that I'm going to talk to you about are applicable to what's happening today. I want to also start today by acknowledging the very odd circumstances we all find ourselves in, because while I am completely comfortable presenting like you and everyone else, I have moved to Zoom. And forgive me as I go between the camera and my notes and back again. You know, I really appreciate the affirming nods and the smiles, and I even miss the confused looks and the rolling of the eyes. So I will take those too, but I'll try my best, as you do all day long with your teams and your colleagues, to connect with you as best I can. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, here we go. Any talk about mental health has to start with neurobiology. Here's a short story about our brain and anxiety and reaction, and I want you to remember the punchline to this. It is not our fault. As it turns out, despite how much we evolved, we are still programmed to run from tigers. So you know all about this, right? You know that it's fight, flight, or freeze. It describes the sympathetic nervous system, the very important system that our early humans needed to get away from danger. Well, it still applies today, even though there are no longer tigers. There is job loss, and there are family losses, and there is health concerns, and elder care, and child care, and racial strife, and yes, money worries and pandemics. So our tigers look a little bit different, but these are the current triggers of our sympathetic nervous system. So these very systems that helped us outrun the tigers are creating a brand new crisis, because when our sympathetic nervous system is activated, we cannot run. So we become overwhelmed and anxious and worried and reactive, and we shut down. And physically, our body does us no favors. Our muscles won't work, our stomach lurches, we sweat, and generally we feel terrible. But here's the clincher about all this. While our physical body is being reactive and not doing us any favors, our prefrontal cortex is disconnecting. Yes, the very seat of our personality and executive functioning has decided to turn off in response to the stress response. So we lose our perspective and our sense of humor and our ability to relate to other human beings. We become totally reactive in mind and body. So what happens to us then when we are in one stressful situation after another at work or at home? And remember, I want you to remember, we're wired this way. It's not our fault. We cannot interrupt it in that exact moment of the stress response. So because it's unrelenting, especially during this time of COVID, this leads to intense emotional and physical fatigue, and it shows up as apathy and indifference and anxiety and anger and sadness and depression. And it shows up as trauma. Trauma, you're all familiar with. Big T trauma is what you would expect. Combat issues, physical or sexual abuse, chronic long illness, loss, death, and destruction. That's big T trauma. These are our returning service people that experience big T trauma. But little t trauma happens to all of us. Those are the slings and arrows of everyday life that we experience over a lifetime, and they can defeat us. So it's not clear which of these your employees, our colleagues, are going to be experiencing over time. But I want to be sure to let you know that trauma is present in our world, in our workplaces, everywhere we look. And there's a misconception about trauma that if you are resilient and you push through and you show some grit and you're rigid in your belief that you can combat this, you'll be fine. But that's not what resilience is. Resilience is actually the ability to pivot and the ability to recharge and the ability to take notice of how you're feeling and what you want to do about it. So in this time and place of the onslaught, the news that is never off, the financial worries in our health, it didn't just start in March of 2020. If you think about the people you work with, they had health issues before this. Maybe you did, or you had a parent who was sick or a child who was sick. So this is compounding and already known. We've known about health issues. We've known about racial strife and divisive issues. This is just kind of a compendium of all of these things. And so how does this show up in the workplace? Well, it shows up for you who are trying to figure out next year's budget and you're thinking about furloughs. It shows up from your managers who constantly are late for meetings, or the employee that doesn't know how to screen share. I mean, who can't do that? It shows up in the way you talk to the people you live with. It shows up when your employees are faced with conforming to social norms and community guidelines about the pandemic. There's a certain amount of shaming that's going on right now about how to react to the pandemic. Do we go back to work? Do we stay at home? So the description I most hear from my clients is this increased anxiety, a lot of exhaustion, and also a certain amount of numbing. And that's that disconnect with that prefrontal cortex. It's just easier to be apathetic. So this crisis has zapped us of our energy. And so recharging, which is resilience, is vital. So from a cost perspective, what are we facing? Employee retention issues, work engagement issues, and employees' fear of taking PTO, and conversely, employees taking a lot of PTO. There's going to be an overall increase in healthcare costs, a decrease in productivity, and overall higher workforce turnover and expenses. So it truly, this small t trauma can truly feel like death from 1,000 cuts. So now I'm going to really bum you out and read you some very sobering statistics that are pre-pandemic, but I'm going to start, yes, I'm going to start with a happy one. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has found that investing in mental wellness is worth it. For every $1 put into treatment for common mental issues like anxiety and depression, there is an ROI, a return on investment, of $4 in improved health and productivity. I don't know of any other intervention that you can do in your places of work that will give you that kind of ROI. And now let us descend into the bad news. A report published by the WHO estimates that depression and anxiety cost the global economy 1 trillion, that's trillion with a T, in lost productivity. This is pre-pandemic. A report published by Capita found that 79% of workers have experienced stress in the last 12 months at work, and 22% feel stress all of the time when they're at work, and 47% actually feel that it's normal to feel stress and anxiety at work. 45% have considered leaving a job because of stress. 53% know somebody who has, and I think this is the one that really gets me, that's going to keep me in business for a while. 49% report that if they talk to their manager about basic anxiety or stress, that their manager would have no idea what to do about it. So the same Captiva report told us that the most common response to stress in the workplace is irritability. There we are again, that prefrontal cortex that is just reactive and can't be responsive. 44% reported they were more irritated at work. 25% drank more alcohol. 28% took it out on their family. And I fear those numbers, I know that in the last 4 months that domestic violence numbers have gone up 30%. So that number is sure to rise. And 15% smoked more cigarettes. So that's it for the bad news, I promise. Now for the good. There are tried and true solutions to these circumstances. I have been working in this business for a very long time. I know what works. They involve strategy and insight and innovation and the ability to pivot and be resilient. So remember, how we react is not our fault, but the way we respond is ours to solve. So I am trained as a therapist. I can tell you all day long personal strategies to combat anxiety and depression and loneliness. However, I want to talk to you today about professional strategies. I want to combine what I know as an executive coach and as a strategist and a psychotherapist to give you action items that you can put into place right now. Okay, so let's start. Most importantly, don't let your experience color your view of your colleagues and your employees' experience. There has to be buy-in from senior leadership that what we're experiencing right now, is a threat to your organizational health, including your mental health. So what does that look like? Well, messaging from the top down has to be empathetic and transparent and affirming. You really must normalize the complete variety of reactions and responses that are going to happen. When you talk to your employees and your colleagues, share a personal experience, tell a story, own it. We all have this same mechanism. CEOs are just like us. We all get stressed out. I want to tell you about one of my clients who's a CEO and runs a national organization. The week of shutdown, he got a call from his son who's going to college, and he was told that the college was shutting down that day. Now, that wouldn't be so bad, but his son is autistic. And so he has some special needs that needed to be attended to. So my client dropped everything and took care of that immediately. But that's not the end of the story. All went well with that. What my client did, very importantly, is he came into the office on Friday and sent out an all-employee email. And he told them the story and the frustration and the fear he had had when he was faced with that situation. You know, he really was transparent in how he was feeling. So he let all of his employees know that whatever they were feeling in whatever situation they had was normal. And that's not the end of the story, because the following week, my team, who coaches a lot of his team and some of the middle managers, when we kind of canvassed them to ask them how they were doing, one of the first things most of them said was about that note in a very long letter talking about shutdown. And so he really let them know that what they were feeling and what he was feeling was normal. Employees' perception of leadership during this pandemic and these last couple of weeks is going to have a profound effect on how smoothly the new normal is and how successful it is. You know, the research is very clear that employees look to leaders during crisis to come up with a plan. So I want you to really consider how you communicate, not just about what's happening in your workplace, but what's happening with resources and what you're offering. So if you're sitting behind a desk in a shirt and tie and sending out a video message, consider that you might be shaming those employees who are thinking, oh, should I be back to work in a shirt and tie behind a desk? You want to send a message that you are facing the same things they are. Think about a town hall where folks can ask the frequently asked questions. Think about a hotline so that they can access their mental health benefits or their general health benefits and access their savings accounts, their health savings accounts, whether they have to take loans from their 401k. And think about a Friday afternoon email with bullet points for those people that process differently and don't necessarily want to listen to a whole video program of how you feel about things, but might just want the facts just then. Put all of these things together to really impact the employees and let them see your transparent leadership and cultural style. You know, for instance, many of our senior leaders are a generation older than their workforce. You may be in a traditional situation where things at home, you have a minimal impact on them. But most of the people that work for you, they have a different experience, and their inside and outside duties are very differently. So what I'm telling you is please refrain from figuring out that why your employees are going through something similar, that they're not going through the same thing you are. So I want you to examine your biases and your blind spots and your assumptions. And the more you do this, the better you'll be able to connect with the employee who is anxious or lonely or depressed or feeling all of those things. I can't stress this enough. You want to ask these kinds of questions. What kind of challenges are my employees facing? How are their lives different from mine? Better yet, ask your senior leaders to have informal conversations with everyone on their team. Find out where the pain points are during this time and try not to be dismissive about the reality of what they're going through. Hold back from making a decision until you hear from all sides. If there was any time in your tenure to be democratic in your acting and your thinking, this is it. Hierarchical thinking is going to lead you to miss out on the information you need for a healthy workforce. Give your opinion last. Okay, next. Do not rely solely on your health insurance and your EAP for your mental health needs. Your EAP, which is an employee assistance program, is usually attached to your insurance. It may be something free that when you bought your insurance, they threw in. And how does it work? They used to be in-house and fully resourced, but now they're a 1-800 number. So your employee would call the 1-800 number and maybe get 2 or 3 therapists in their zip code. Here's the secret about EAPs. They don't pay very well, therapists. And so if a therapist is good and busy and has referrals from insurance companies and colleagues and other clients and patients, the EAP referral may get put on the bottom of the pile. And so what that means is if your employee is having an acute anxiety attack and calls on a Monday and gets an appointment with a therapist the following Friday, that really is not helping the situation. In fact, the employee is feeling more disconnected from company resources and is understanding that they have to do these things on their own. The same with your behavioral health insurance. There's usually a very high deductible. And in this time and place, folks are not wanting to spend money on their deductible. So again, they allow mental health issues and organizational health issues to become acute before they access them, which causes many problems in terms of employee engagement, employee productivity, and employee time off. Also, besides the high deductibles, there are limited sessions. So just when an employee is feeling like they're unraveling and they're getting to the place where they're able to share some of their innermost thoughts and feelings, they're out of sessions. So you can't rely on these two health benefits to get you through. Instead, provide training for your managers within your organization to talk with colleagues about the signs of disengagement and loneliness and lost productivity and sadness and anxiety. I'm not telling you to train them as therapists. I'm asking you to teach them therapeutic techniques that are really easy to learn and implement. So for example, when you ask someone, how are you? The answer invariably is fine. But when you say to someone, hey, how are things happening at your house? Where are the pain points? Where are the struggles? What's going on with your family? How are you dealing with care? That opens up a conversation. And with a few short sentences, your manager now has a pipeline of information if the employee desires to send to the resource, whatever that may be. And while you're at it, recognize that one accommodation for an employee does not fit all. So we've had employees working from home before, and now we have many employees working from home. We have flexible work times. We have those individual contributors who seem to do just fine. We have team leaders who are missing their teams. We have introverts and extroverts and influencers and connectors and parents and elders. They all need a different part of accommodating in this new world order. So instead, survey your employees, see what's working and what isn't. Simple questions, very simple questions, yield great results. The survey should be anonymous and look something like this. How would you rate the company's response to the crisis so far? What are your top 3 workplace concerns? How can the organization best meet your needs during this time? What are the strengths and weaknesses for you of working from home? What would you like to see done differently? You will get a wealth of information from a 5-question survey. We're asking a lot of our workforce. So I don't want you to rely on the managers. I know I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth here, but I don't want you to rely on managers to take the initiative on their own. They are in the same boat as employees, and they are running the business, and they need your help navigating the staff. And if you have leaders that are predominantly left-brain individuals, maybe they're analytical or transactional and solution-oriented, that muscle of engagement that's just more familiar for our right-brained folks, you know, that muscle that relies on empathy and vulnerability and transparency, that may not be easily accessible. They need help. So I want you to consider offering support. Wrap into the benefit package sessions of executive coaching for both the individual and the team. Incorporate self-care techniques. Make them front and center into employee engagement. Offer health and wellness interventions that are usually buried in a benefit book, you know, as well as specialized resources for elder care and child care. Have folks come in from the community. You can probably get from a variety of sources folks to come in and do kind of in-place assessments of what your organizational health looks like, what the mental health needs are. Someone who can come in and talk about budget and trying to access money from their 401k is really popular and does a lot for someone's anxiety and reduces it. Really importantly is to elevate HR, because HR is a really significant partner in strategy development and decision making right now. In the reporting structure, let your employees know that HR has the ear of the CEO. Empower the HR department to create processes and systems that put all of these mental health concerns and organizational health concerns and the diversity and inclusion concerns right up front. You have to get all the support you need in this new normal. So if your HR department is not very robust, consider contracting it out. And also what HR can do, your HR business partners know your workforce. They can pick in every department an ambassador, someone who has a high emotional quotient. You know these people. These are the ones that know when the birthdays are. They know what's going on in the department. They have their finger on the pulse. They can be trained as mental health ambassadors. They can ask questions of their colleagues. Mini trainings, micro trainings about depression and anxiety and isolation and other mental health issues. And it's a great opportunity for them to connect with their folks and for them again to put them in a pipeline. So my final messages to you are these. These solutions are cost effective. Checking your biases is free. Elevating HR and let everyone know that they have your back is free. Surveying your employees is almost free with something like SurveyMonkey. And the resources I mentioned here, training your managers in empathy and communication, developing mental health ambassadors, and providing coaching, that gives you an ROI that is enviable. So for example, if you have a mid-level manager that makes $100,000 a year, I'm talking about $5,000 put towards individual and team training and coaching. That's a bargain. If you had to replace that employee or you had to undo a lawsuit because of accommodation issues, it would be, astronomical. And we've learned a really important lesson in this pandemic. Our employees can work from home. They are adults. This debate about remote learning and leading that's been going on for years has taken a giant leap forward. They're nimble. They know how to be resilient. In my experience, the employees that aren't really doing well in the workplace don't really do well at home. But the employees that do great in the workplace, they do great at home. In fact, they're the ones I'm worried about because I want them to turn off their computer and put down their phone and stop blurring the lines between work and home. I want them to practice extreme self-care and understand that they're in this for the long haul and that they don't have to react to the stress response, day after day continuously. So I'm really asking you to consider expanding your concept of mental health in the workplace. It's been hidden and it comes out usually when there's a problem. I would like to be called when someone hasn't been let go from an office because they were acting oddly or because they were a bad actor. When I get into an office, I can usually tell that something was amiss and maybe culture was not taken care of early on. At the very least, think about what the last couple of months has been for you, and of course the last couple of weeks. So I wish you all good things going forward. This is going to be hard, but worth it. So thank you.
Anne, that was really amazing. I'm a little stunned, and I think most people are in this conversation. As you were talking, I was personally reflecting on a conversation that happened in mid-April, so about a month into the quarantine here in the Bay Area. I was on the phone with some leaders in the construction and architecture fields, and they were telling me how great it was that everybody was working at home. That was all wonderful, and productivity had never been higher. And I found that so interesting because about an hour previously, I had been on the phone with people who worked at another level within these organizations. And they were telling me about how stressed out they all were because they were now homeschooling their kids and their dog was acting out, and all these parts of life of caring for elders, all those sorts of things were making them so stressed out, which in my mind made me think, how can productivity be high if the people doing the work are completely stressed out? And I wonder if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Sure, because adrenaline is an amazing thing. Because when we are in the throes of the stress response, what do? We talk faster, we breathe heavier, we get it done, we get it done, we get it done, we collapse. Then we're awake at night thinking about what we have to do the next day. So it's not sustainable. I'm hearing now, 3 months in, my clients who were pleasantly surprised by the workforce. Wow, they're great. I have no problems. I don't even talk to them. I was like, okay, whoa. Talk to your workforce because they are about to burn out. And I meant it when I said I was worried about those employees, because now they're kind of creeping. They're saying, it's summer. What am I going to do with my kids? My parents in a nursing home, I haven't seen them in 3 months. So we're hitting the wall right about now. And now is the time, now that we've turned our attention away from what to do now about this, we have to turn our attention to what to do later as we start to get into the months and years of this trauma response.
I have another question for you, which is what are the costs, do you believe, to the American economy, to individual businesses by essentially continuing with the status quo? Not necessarily from a fiscal perspective, but just from a...
I mentioned the World Health Organization number of 1 trillion, which is just, you can't even think about what that actually means. But I can tell you that personally, I've been working in organizational health for over 30 years. I can tell you that when I am called in, when a culture is toxic and there are communication issues and there is high anxiety and high stress and folks that have left for healthcare costs, it is much more expensive at that time. And let's not forget litigation. When people are stressed and anxious and depressed and they feel they're not getting supported at work, somebody is going to be blamed. And so litigation occurs at that point. So the costs are astronomical, of course, if there's litigation involved. But if you just look at your employee PTO time and compare it, I think that it's going to be an interesting year to compare PTO and healthcare costs in 2020 to 2023 to the 3 years previous. I think we're going to see a huge jump. We already are, with the physical manifestation, of course, of the stress response, that continual stress response.
Monica, I think you had a question. Do you want to ask your question?
What are some resources that you'd recommend for training like a mental health ambassador that you said? Is there like webinars or online
oh boy, there is so much information online. Any of the local psychological associations or association of licensed professional counselors, mental health counselors, I would tell you that every state has a robust referral source. HR folks really do know how to access these people too. They have them come in and talk about different things. And like I said, mental health is coming out of the shadows. So you can Google, how do I deal with anxiety? And you'll have millions of hits. So it's really accessible in every way.
One of the things that I found really interesting in this period of this COVID time is a lot more understanding and curiosity about other cultures and how they respond to many different things, medical care, funeral arrangements, all those sorts of things. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what learnings there might be from other cultures that we could take that would be useful in this moment.
Well, I don't think we have to look too far to look at other cultures, and I think we can look far and wide. A lot of small businesses, because they're so employee intensive and have to take care of their employees, are already doing this stuff right. because they have a small workforce, and so they have a more personable view. Look to them. And also understand that, when I talk to you about surveying, I cannot stress enough what an anonymous survey with your employees, who of course will come from all different cultures, will do for you. In fact, I will tell a very short story. I have a very big client that's worldwide, and they decided after every training, no matter how big or small, technical, HR, ethics, compliance, whatever, they were going to add 3 questions to the surveys. Did the participants in this presentation give equal representation to all colors, creed, and sex? If not, what was missing? What would you like to see done differently? I mean, it was so easy, and they were thrilled. They thought, oh, this is an initiative. We're going to find out great information. We're doing it right. Well, they're a worldwide organization. And what they found out is that their D&I work, diversity and inclusion work, was dismal because people reacted in such a way, oh, guess what else you're missing? They really answered those questions. I think they got, if I'm not mistaken, they got like a 13 to 15% return on the answers, which is pretty incredible for an anonymous survey. So I think it's easy to incorporate what others are doing culturally worldwide if you just listen. I think that's the most important aspect of this.
I see that we have on the call Liz York. Liz came and gave the keynote for CIDCI's Fall Forum last fall. And Liz is also in Atlanta. Liz, I'm just wondering if you would like to say anything.
Hi, Margie. I appreciate the opportunity. This is really a great challenge that we all have that we're facing. And I think that a lot of all the messages we've gotten today have been really positive. I appreciate that. But I think the idea of listening and then being yourself as a leader are 2 that I've seen play out with great success in some of the organizations that I'm a part of. And some of the funniest things that have happened and have really helped reduce anxiety and stress for team members have been when leaders have said, just be yourself, just bring your whole self to the workplace. And of course, the workplace is now online. And we've had some really funny exchanges of kind of leaders saying, send a picture of the stresses that you're facing at home. And, we've had employees who, sent pictures of their dogs eating their homework and, their kids taking tests and just like the squirrels eating the tomatoes, all of the things that are real life now are of our everyday experience. And I think it really, rings, it rings true with the information that that we've heard today to just be a real person and to share your personness with your staff, because we're all going through a tough time and you don't know what masks, literally and figuratively, other people are wearing to prevent you from seeing the pain and the suffering that they're going through. And I think that there are all these metaphors going on, but it's the reality of what we're facing. And you may listen just at the right time when someone needs you to be listening. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you, Margie, for the chance.
Thanks.
The point that Liz just made about showing up as your whole self is really an aspect of vulnerability. We're all vulnerable. And we're really vulnerable right now. We're all engaged in this. And so to show up as yourself is the best gift.
I can't thank you enough, Anne. This was so fantastic, really so beautiful. And I think exactly the message we need right now. People are just starting to get back to work in our community, some at the workplace, going back to their workplace. And there, I think, is that combination of excitement at seeing your peers and also fear. And I think that you've
Yes.
helped us give us sort of both of those worlds. So thank you. Thank you so much. Anne is available for consulting if anyone else wants to go deep with her on this as well. Do you want to just take 1 second to talk about your firm's work, Anne?
Yeah, we are international. We do some work in Canada and overseas. And we start usually with an assessment of the situation, whether it be an executive coaching assignment or whether it is a cultural assignment. If there's a toxic workplace or there is a breakdown in communication, or now I'm seeing this more often, which of course I'm very happy about, firms are offering executive coaching as a benefit. And so we work with many teams all at once, and we get to help people reach their potential personally and professionally. We also have a mental health arm because most of us are trained as, if you look at our website, you'll see we're trained as mental health professionals and or lawyers or both. And so we are able to assess a situation quickly in a mental health perspective and get it to the right place right away. We actually will put people in place in businesses and get them to help out if need be. So it's very gratifying.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. So this will conclude today's CIDCI online salon. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Our next salon, Jack Lakin and Tom Machenchik, will discuss sustainable smart city initiatives that can be implemented to heat and cool buildings using standard precast products and HVAC equipment. Discover how precision engineering and innovation fills a void with current designs to create better buildings. Sign up to receive notifications of these salons by subscribing at CIDCI.org. Thanks for joining us. And as always, if you have any thoughts or comments or ideas, please reach out to us via CIDCI's website, Contact Us link. And special thanks to Monica Zwisler for keeping us all on track, and Anne McSorley for an amazing presentation. Thank you all so much. Be safe and see you soon.